Hi, welcome back to CS 170. We're still continuing with Chapter 4. We're going to be applying styles now. Okay. Uh, so they call this a cascade. I think the best way for me to explain this would just be to say that starting at the top, that's pretty much the default, whatever styling comes along with that. So right at the beginning, when you're at the sample HTML browser, where we put in like H1, H2, H3, all of that, that's kind of like the default stuff. And then as you go further down, you can override some of those. So, so this is what they mean by the style sources cascade from the lowest to the highest. So what it means is here's your default. You don't do anything at all. You apply your tags, your styles that associate with those. This is your default. Plain text usually, and then maybe some bold and emphasis and whatnot. And then the next level down is CSS, which I'll show you in a second. And then the next thing is style tags, and then these formatting tags here, and then inline styling. So you can override these levels, otherwise you'll be taking at the highest level. And you'll see more about what I mean in a second. So here's some references. You can look at what we mean by styles. You talk about things like background color, the color for the text, the fonts, font sizes, and whatnot. So basically dressing up, adding more color and flair, and we'll be doing some examples in a second. Okay. So this is what we mean by inline styling. So whatever, you remember we were talking about attributes, right? So at the beginning with the tag of bold, let's say, you would just have the less than sign, B, and then greater than sign, and then you'd have like this /B here, and that closes it off like this, right? But now you add in this attribute with the style, you can see here tag style attributes, right? So here's the attributes. You want to set the color to be red, and then you have this, okay? And you can go beyond that, right? You can look at the background color, right? So now you can set the background color to be green. That's why you see this here. You can play around with the font size, right? Make that bigger, 25 pixels, right? So that's different types of things you can play around with in terms of this style attribute for bold. Okay, so this is what we call inline styling. Don't worry, I'm going to pull up some examples in a second. We're just kind of going through this. Now we have span here. So in this case, you're doing something because you have bold, right? But now I have some normal text, but I still want to play around with some attributes here. So you use this span tag right here. So you can see what they do. It's the same thing as what we did with bold, right? You put in span here, and then you can put in the style with the color attribute to dark turquoise, right? Like this, and close it off. So basically you put span what you were doing with B before, okay? So this is just basically setting these different colors down here, right? So you can see this, this, and this becomes this, this, and this, okay? Let me go over to my page here. I'll show you what I did. I basically went into the HTML editor, and forget about this stuff here for a second. I'll come back to it in a second. But you see I just pasted what I just showed you there. I pasted it to here on the HTML side, and then right away it shows up here. Okay, so same thing, right? You see the turquoise, the blue, and the dark magenta, and you see this. Okay, and you remember this was just like some me messing around before. Okay, don't worry about this other stuff up here yet. I'm going to get to it in a second. Okay, so now you see this, right? You're doing the tags within the head, right? Like this. You have the head, and then within that you have the style in the head, and then you can do stuff like this. So you can see the body, you know, you remember H1 to H6, and then within that, you can set these different attributes, right? So the nice thing about this is like, if you have a very large document, let's say, probably not even that large, you don't want to go there and set like all of these different attributes for all of them manually. That would be like a huge pain in the butt, right? So that's why you go up to certain things like this at the header level, head level, and be able to define things like this. So this applies across the whole document. So that's why you can see something like this, right? I took this and I applied it back to here. So you can see the head, you can see the style, and within that, I did different things, okay? Well, actually, I just lost it. And you can see right away it changed all of this back. So let me go back here and set this back again. So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to copy it back to here. Okay, and then right away it changes here. So I didn't really like this dark slate gray. So let me set this to antique white. Okay, and it changes it right away. Okay, now look, you can see H1, right? So you see the H1 up here, and then you see we applied H1 down here, right? So for the H1, we set the color to be gold, and we set the text alignment to be center. So that means anytime I use H1, that's what happens, right? So this country, USA, this became centered in gold. So let me just change this. So I changed this to H1. You can see it also did the same thing for state New Jersey. Okay, so this is a lot easier than if I went through each of these every single time and overwrote it at this level. I'd be doing this all day. So to be able to set it at this level is pretty convenient. Okay, and you know, the next bit up is CSS files. But before I get to that, people might be saying, well, okay, how do I come up with all these different colors? I mean, certainly we don't memorize all these colors, right? So something like this, it's, you know, this W3 Schools is very convenient. It has all kinds of good reference in here if you want to look at it. But this one I just took for the HTML color names, and you can see all the colors here. Okay, so I can refer to all these colors, or I can refer to it by hex. Right, so this is where hex comes into play. You don't want to be referring to these colors in binary. That would be huge, right? So referring to it by hex is a lot easier. Okay, so a lot of times you'll see different things in terms of colors. They'll be specifying it in terms of hex. So that's where hex might come into play as far as you're concerned. But you know, with the styles, if you prefer to use these like text names up here, you can do the same thing. And so that's where we get all the colors. So you can play around with it. You can take any of these colors and do it. So let's say I don't like antique white. Let me do beige. Right. So I'll just go over to here and let me do beige, like so. And right away it clicks it on there. Yeah, this flipped to strong for me. Let me take out strong. What should I do with this? Let me make this a H2 also. Just like so. Okay. So you get the idea. So even though we showed you how to make the updates to the styles at this level here in the body, if you're only doing one or two, I guess that's fine. But if you're doing a whole bunch of these, you really want to kind of think about how you get it up here. And in some ways, you can kind of get a lot better consistency, right? You're probably not going to have like 10 million different types of stylings. You're probably going to have a certain set of stylings. You want to maintain that consistently throughout the document. That probably looks a lot better than a whole bunch of noise, like in all different colors and whatnot. Let me just go over to here to show you the next level where you can apply, let's say, a certain type of styling, right? So you think about the large companies, Amazon, whoever, any companies you can name of, they create a whole bunch of documents. For them, they don't want to have to keep on putting in these styles over and over again, and they want people to represent their pages in a consistent fashion. So that's where you get into things like CSS files. All right, so as it refers to, CSS file, these are style files. Standard, you put it into a file, and in the head section you'll have a reference, right? So you'll call it a style sheet, right? And in this case they call it test.css, and you'll be able to pull all of your stuff in, and as it says with the style tags on the HTML file, it's basically going to override. So whatever CSS pulls in, you remember that was kind of at the top level. If you want to override it, you'll still be able to do that. So it's not like it overrides everything. Let me come back to here. See here, CSS external file. So it comes in just above what the browser defaults to, but you can see down here you can override with these things down here, which we just did. Okay. So that's what this CSS is. So you can use this, and then you can just basically import it to all the different pages and reference. You can get like some common file across everything. Okay, so as it says here, you can change the look and feel of the entire website by just changing one file. So as long as all of the different pages are using this CSS file, and then you don't have a huge amount of overrides beneath that, you can change the CSS file, and then everything else will change across the site in one shot. So that's pretty convenient. So these are examples. It's a little bit, you just play around with it, similar to what I did on the HTML view here. You play around with it. You see all these different things here, and then right away on this side you'll see how it plays out. So I would just suggest you play around with it, just like before I mentioned. You want to play around with the different tags and see how they look like. You want to try and do that. It's not that difficult. Just put all the different text here and put one of the tags here, right? You can do something like, all of your tags from H1 through H6, so on and so forth. Okay. Now I'm going to save this part. So this goes into lists and tables. So I'm going to hold this off. I'm going to cut another clip for this. So for now, I'm going to end this lecture, and we'll pick up a new one soon.